On. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another interview with Students for Political Engagement. So today we have an interview with Wil Husnutdinov, who is a candidate for Ward 5 Councillor. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And so to start us off, would you like to, give a brief introduction of yourself and why you're running for City Council?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Wil Husnutdinov. So I'm actually a retired athlete. I know retired athlete is kind of, makes me seem older than I actually am. But yeah, I used to do, competitive gymnastics. I was a trampolinist for a number of years. And now I'm currently a student at the University of Toronto, where I'm studying political science. I'm a very avid community advocate, and I really love to advocate for young people and young people in positions of leadership. I'm running because, we need new people in politics. I think that's been, that's very clear if you've watched, any council meetings over the last couple of years. There's division, there's mismanagement, bad behavior. And I really think if we elect new leaders with new perspectives who are actually passionate about the work they do, who care about the taxpayers, and who want to put residents at the forefront of decision making, we need to elect those types of leaders. And that's why I'm running. People, young people have new perspectives. They're energetic, they're passionate. And if we have more young people at the table, I think we can really improve the state of the city.
Thank you. And this leads to our first question. One of the more important aspects of a good city is efficient transportation. What, as councillor, would you do to develop and improve Richmond Hill's current transportation system?
Yeah, one of my most important policies of this election is ensuring that the young subway extension actually comes to Richmond Hill Centre. I think, for far too long, we've been overly reliant on motor vehicles, whether it be, work or school, whether you go to the University of Toronto, Toronto Metropolitan University. One of the only options is to go by car or by bus. And if you do use public transit, you have to go to Finch Station, which is very time consuming. So a good alternative to driving to the city of Toronto or other places is if we have a train station, a subway station at Richmond Hill Centre. This is a good way to, end our love affair with cars and to actually have good, high quality transportation. And this is also good for the environment. More people using public transit is always great for the environment.
All right, thank you for that answer. And I was wondering, as a follow-up, so obviously there are also other modes of transportation, such as bicycling and walkings. So I was wondering if you might have any thoughts on those modes of transportation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think biking is an incredibly, efficient and very environmentally friendly mode of transportation. The unfortunate thing is I've heard a lot of residents say that they don't think our streets are safe enough for public transit. There are some, roads in the city that have bike lanes, but a lot of them do not. So it's hard to expect people biking long distances or even short distances to feel comfortable on roads where there's, half a meter between cars that they're driving beside. I've biked, a lot in my life, and I can, sometimes I go on the sidewalk because I really do not feel comfortable riding my bike on the street, considering how close the cars are. So I feel like if we invest in our biking infrastructure, adding more bike lanes and making biking safer, I think we can really promote biking as a good means of transportation.
All right, thank you for that answer. And I think this leads into our next question, which is about finances. So as a municipality, the financial health of the city is a very important part of its operation. So what would you do as councillor to ensure that Richmond Hill is on good financial grounds, while at the same time providing the same or improved services?
Yeah, so the city's financial stability is very heavily reliant on the collection of property taxes and user fees. This money is at the core of the services that the city provides to residents. However, we also need to keep in mind that residents in Richmond Hill struggle on a daily basis with the cost of living, and raising taxes will add to that burden, unfortunately. So I think as a council, we need to develop a balanced approach to fiscal responsibility and to understanding the lives of the daily lives of residents in Richmond Hill. So to me, this means if we do ever raise property taxes, which isn't my policy for the record, but if we ever do, it should never go above the rate of inflation. So this is a good way to increase our funding for vital services like for the fire department, while also ensuring property taxes remain as low as feasible.
Thank you. And this leads into our third question, which has to do with public parks and green spaces. So our public parks and green spaces are an important part of Richmond Hill. How will you work to protect and improve the environment of Richmond Hill?
Yeah, honestly, I think too often we choose development over natural preservation. Richmond Hill, has a very beautiful and vast natural landscape, and this environment, it has to be cherished and not bulldozed. So instead of developing high rises, on these beautiful green spaces, tearing down our forests in the name of high rises, we should actually ensure that these buildings are built on empty plots. Because in the city, we have a number of developments that have been approved on lots that actually haven't, even begun construction. So why are we tearing down these, our beautiful natural environments where all these animals live when we could be building on empty lots that are already approved to be built? So I wouldn't, in my opinion, as a councillor, I wouldn't be in favor of destroying natural environment in favor of, large developments. I'd prefer we get going on the developments that have already been approved on empty lots.
All right, thank you. And I think this leads into our next question, which is on urban development. So as you mentioned, you would, support more development on empty lots instead of like in areas that were previously like natural environments. And obviously urban development is an important part of city council's responsibility. And city council has to balance issues like the pricing of housing versus other things like density and adequate services. So how will you, what is your philosophy of how city council should approach this and balance these issues?
Yeah, so with most things, I really think we need to adopt a balanced approach. Right now, development is a very polarizing issue, and I completely understand that. But right now, we're in a housing crisis. And like many of you, we worry about our ability to buy a home. You and I, we're at that age where we need to be thinking about whether or not we're going to be buying a house in the city of Richmond Hill, or we're going to be leaving the city. And that's something that I've grappled with as well. You need to have an extremely high salary to even afford to afford any type of property in Richmond Hill. So that really worries me. So we need to increase our housing supply, but that doesn't mean we need to, number one, destroy our natural environments. And that also doesn't mean we need to build, huge high rises in residential areas where it just doesn't make sense, or would, destroy the physical infrastructure we currently have in place. So to me, my opinion would be that we need to focus on medium density housing. This way, we can increase the housing supply for people like you and me, for people who are immigrants to Canada who want to buy properties in Richmond Hill, without having to build, these 70-story high rises that, thousands of people are going to occupy. And then every Monday morning on Yonge Street, there's going to be thousands of people trying to exit to work, going to the city of Toronto for their employment. We just don't have the physical infrastructure for all of these thousands of people on all of these high rises. So middle density housing is the optimal strategy in my view.
And just as a follow-up question, what does medium density housing look like, and how will you plan to involve this with our various transportation systems?
Yeah, so to me, middle density housing would be low rises, mid rises, duplexes, triplexes, and infill development. This is a really good way to, increase the housing supply without, overdeveloping, and also make it dense enough that it doesn't contribute to urban sprawl. Unfortunately, we're just at a point in our history where we don't have room for, single houses, detached houses. We just don't have the room anymore. So we do have to find new strategies to build, and that would be infill, medium density, low rises, mid rises.
All right, and just as another follow-up to that, so you stated that your philosophy is sort of like you want to build like medium-sized houses, and so do you have any ideas on like where these houses could be built? Like, should they be built along major transportation routes? They be more spread out into like communities? Like those sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, middle density housing can be built. There's a lot of places in the city and the ward that it could be built. There are a lot of empty lots. There are a lot of, free space where they could be built. And also, I think we need to approve these. We need to start approving these developments as opposed to larger scale developments. These major routes like Yonge Street, Bathurst, Major Mackenzie, yeah, they're great. They're great places to have these because the physical infrastructure is actually built to support larger numbers of people. When it comes to these smaller roads that are, in our small neighborhoods, two-way lane streets, it might not be the best option to put them there because there's just the physical infrastructure just doesn't have the capacity to hold all those people.
All right, thank you. And this question has to do with community safety. So
Mhm.
an important part of a livable community is community safety. How will you as a councillor maintain and improve community safety in Richmond Hill?
Yeah, so community safety should be of utmost importance to the municipal governments. Right now, we need to improve and amend our current traffic safety measures. I've knocked on over 5,000 doors in the ward already, and I've knocked on a lot of people who are worried about road safety. One way to combat. So what people have told me is that these small residential roads near Carville, Richvale, that community at night and sometimes even the day, some cars go highway speeds on them, which is completely absurd. So one way to combat this, and one way to ensure that parents actually feel safe letting their kids go outdoors without the risk of any people going highway speeds on those roads, is to introduce traffic calming measures. There's a variety of options that can be implemented, that work best in any specific street, whether it be, traffic bumps or any other sort of traffic calming measures.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, another aspect of community safety is not just restricted to traffic, but it's also involving with crime and crime rates. So what measures will you implement to improve community safety in those aspects?
Yeah, so I think a really important thing to do is working with different levels of government. So on council, we serve with 2 regional councillors who are members of York Regional Council, and the city of Richmond Hill also has 2 MPs and 2 MPPs. So I think it's really important that we work with those levels of government who actually have jurisdiction over police services like YRP and OPP to ensure that streets are properly to ensure that crime stays at an all-time low, ensure that there's enough support for services, and ensure that the police properly patrol the areas.
All right, thank you for that answer. And I think you've kind of already touched on our next question, which is on the relationship between different levels of government. So you've obviously talked about in the crime segment there about how we need to work with other levels of government to enhance policing, and a lot of other issues in Richmond Hill also need to be worked with other levels of government, such as housing, such as transit. So what is your idea of how the relationship between Richmond Hill and others of levels of government should be navigated?
Yeah, I think the job of councillor is, and any other government official, is to work together hand in hand. It never works well when a municipality has a certain, governing strategy and the province has another. This was highlighted when the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs had their EMZO, the Ministerial Zoning Order, which they approved, a ton of housing when the city and the council probably would not have approved this housing. So when we're at odds with one another, it never works well. So we need to ensure that there's efficient and effective communication between, the representatives of all levels of government. The councillors should speak with the regional councillors, they should speak with the MPs, and they should speak with the MPPs, so that we can actually have a collaborative approach to solving important issues in our city.
And thank you. So this leads us to our last question. So as if you were to be elected as Ward 5 councillor, what would be the first issue you would try to address?
So my first priority is affordability and housing. These two issues in my mind go hand in hand. We need to support those who want to enter the housing market, and we want to help those who already own their homes. This means, as I mentioned before in this interview, that we need to build medium density housing that is both quality and doesn't contribute to urban sprawl or overdevelopment. And we need to support those who already have houses by ensuring property taxes stay as low as feasible, while also ensuring we have funding for vital services.
So just as a follow-up to that, are there any services in particular that you think could be granted more funding, or anything that you think could be granted less funding?
I think right now that I think our emergency services need to always be well funded, in particular the fire department. I don't think any department right now has too much funding. I think, where possible, we need to give, these departments more funding to ensure that we have quality services to the residents of Richmond Hill.
All right, thank you very much. And that concludes our interview today. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.